you just got rewounded, basically. So it's not like it happened, let's say 40 years ago. It happened 4 minutes ago. And that wound just had the scab torn off of it. And you're back in that same old dynamic. So that's what we're trying to break up. That's what we're trying to deconstruct, so that if you normally would spend, a few days in this victimized place, that now with our tools, just in a nanosecond, you're out of it and back to really feeling and living the truth of who you are.
And I think that also we as coaches help them a lot in that fine tuning, because somebody who goes through an experience like that of then lashing out because I actually finally spoke, then they're going to go back into shame because it didn't turn out well. I mean, the communication that they finally expressed wasn't a good thing at all.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Love Sugar Podcast. I'm your host, Jeanne Byrd. Welcome to the Love Sugar Podcast, transforming love lives one bite at a time. I'm Jeanne Byrd, your host. I'm a love and relationship coach, specializing in finding love, nurturing love, or completing love if necessary. And I also have a Master of Science degree in advanced health coaching. Exploring love and romance through the lens of emotional and physical well-being is not something that you often hear about, but it's critical to understand. Why? Because your experience of love and your perception of love is happening through your mind and your body. So to have the best experience in love, you need to address your intuition and nutrition. In today's episode, we'll be talking about conscious uncoupling, the 5-step process created by New York Times bestselling author Katherine Woodward Thomas. This process helps people to complete their union in an emotionally healthy and conscious way. And no matter how challenging the circumstances of the breakup are, it really does inspire and foster a respectful manner that really does lend itself to goodwill, healing, and repair. And as Katherine says in her book, a breakup is nothing short of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have a spiritual awakening. And to join me today on this journey is my friend, colleague, and soul sister, Isandra Muñoz Bonilla. She is a fellow coach in this work. Would you like to say hello to our listeners?
Hi, everybody. So happy to be here. Thank you, Jeanne, for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so grateful. So I'm going to formally introduce Isandra in a minute, but first I wanted to share with you how we're going to talk about this. We're going to pick a few relevant principles and practices of the 5-step process, discuss them, and share our personal experiences as well as a few with our clients. These practices are also relevant and absolutely essential to your everyday life. At its core, conscious uncoupling is an opportunity to consciously uncouple from the old patterns you've been operating from, to outgrow who you've known yourself to be, so that you can really grow in wisdom and to hold the high watch for the freedom that awaits you just on the other side of this breakup. So before we dive into our conversation, I'd like to share with our listeners today about my guest, Isandra. Isandra Muñoz Bonilla navigated her own conscious uncoupling in a safe and masterful way, using her highly developed skills as a transformative educator, lawyer, and certified coach in the modalities of calling in the one, conscious uncoupling, also a certified money coach, and a consultant for Franklin Covey and his work, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. These credentials and experience have informed and inspired her work with her Spanish and English-speaking clients. So welcome to the Love Sugar podcast, Isandra.
Thank you, Jeannie. I'm so happy to be here and excited about what we will create together
Yay!
today.
Yes, as I am. Yes. So these are the principles of conscious uncoupling I'd like to just name here for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Number one is to really free yourself from breakup shame and blame. And number two, to really experience that the worst thing that happened to you can become the absolute best thing for your life. And number three, awaken to your breakup as a life-altering opportunity to transform your disappointing and destructive patterns in love at the deepest level. And number four, learn how to break up better and leave everyone involved healed and ready to embrace their future. So I'd like to start and ask you, Isandra, which of the above principles has had the most profound impact in your own life?
Well, Jeannie, definitely breaking up better was part of my intention when it all began, when I started seeing the signs that the time would come for me. And this comes from a life experience of having had my parents divorced in the 80s and having chosen to study law in order to help people not go through such damaging experiences. So when my time came to consider a divorce, a separation, what I feared the most was who I was going to become. Who would I turn out to be when these emotions and these decisions to be made came up? So finding conscious uncoupling as a way to do it better was like my North Star. And in fact, I think that is what brought the work into my life. After having looked for so many resources, this was the one that really hit home.
Yeah, that's really profound. I love what you're speaking to because, you're essentially asking yourself, who am I going to be as a woman who is not in her marriage, as a divorced woman? What does that look like? What does that feel like? So I can just imagine what you were working through. So I really love that.
And
I really love that.
also, who am I going to be during the process? How am I going to show up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been a person who I'm really attentive to how I show up, and especially thinking about me having children. What was going to be during that process? What is it that my children were going to see in me and in us when we were going through the process? All of that was really in my heart and in my mind when I continued looking for ways to make my process the best way possible.
As we learn in Conscious Uncoupling, we are totally focused and centered on the well-being of the children at all times. So I love that you're speaking that. And I would say, in terms of the principles of Conscious Uncoupling, for me, what has changed my life dramatically is to learn how to communicate with others during a difficult conversation that at the end leaves both parties understanding the other one and feeling so much compassion for the journey that their partner has been on, so that it leaves so much harmony and goodwill at the end of the conversation.
Yes, I agree. There's so many principles that have been of so much value for me in my life, and at that time during the separation and divorce, that was what was most important to me. But throughout my life, in many different situations, I have used them, including that one. Right, every time we are faced with a situation that triggers us and hits our buttons.
I know.
We are so grateful to have these resources, these tools, and also the skills we have been developing because of the clarity we have found through this work.
All right. So I'd like to continue to really discuss the 5-step process and take each step and share our personal and professional experience as we guide clients through it. And just to mention again, these steps are also applicable in non-romantic relationships. I know myself, I have personally guided a man through this process to uncouple from the unhealthy dynamics with his mother, and also with another gentleman to help him uncover from really toxic behaviors in the workplace. So these principles do work, even without a primary romantic relationship. Do you have any experience or thoughts you want to share around that?
Yes, I frequently use this with my clients in the area of work, in the workplace too. That is very common. And in my personal experience, I was blessed to have this work with me and the tools and the skills when Puerto Rico, where I come from, went through Hurricane Maria some years ago.
Yeah.
And it was a very difficult time in which things changed. There was a sort of an uncoupling from what had been and what was in terms of my life, right, in the moment. And also when I lost one of my soul sisters who passed away, it was it was these tools that helped me navigate this through.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. So let's move into step 1. Find emotional freedom. That is so rich in so many practices. But let's concentrate on the practice of the inner sanctuary of safety. In other words, identifying what you are feeling and needing. In a breakup, they are nothing short of intense, and often those feelings feel overwhelming and kind of wild and a bit destructive. But in this practice of identifying our feelings and needs, we can harness the impact of the intensity of those feelings to actually fuel and inspire unprecedented and positive change in our lives. So I'm wondering if you would like to weigh in on this practice of feeling and needs, Isandra, and maybe what your experience or that of your clients has been.
Actually, I think this is my favorite practice from Conscious Uncoupling. I think it is so valuable. For once, this practice, one of its ways in which we use it is to help clients self-soothe or self-soothe ourselves when we are feeling all of these emotions. And I think that it becomes really like everyday valuable also. When we want clarity inside a conversation, we were just mentioning communication. We were just mentioning communication. And one of the things that I use it a lot for is when I am in a situation in which I am starting to feel triggered and discomfort. I can use this practice of what I am feeling and what I need in order to clarify myself before I express myself.
Right. Yes, that's beautiful. Absolutely. Would that everyone in the world think before they spoke. It would be just
Exactly.
a revolution.
Exactly. Think before you speak, pause before you speak, but it's beyond thinking, right? It's really connecting, checking in with yourself to have the clarity to
Yes.
actually be effective in what you are needing to share.
Yes. And also when you actually physically and verbally express those feelings out loud, I'm feeling, rejected. I can see that you're feeling rejected. I'm feeling unappreciated. I can see that you're feeling unappreciated. That also helps to de-escalate the intensity of the feelings by just hearing your voice name it.
Yes, it's
You
lovely
know?
to feel seen and heard by yourself when you're doing the practice. And it's one of
Yeah.
the things that my clients value a lot, especially people who
Yeah.
feeling very alone and invisible and unseen. This is a practice that gives them the opportunity to provide themselves that experience 24/7 without needing
Yes.
anybody else to take care of that for them. So it's very powerful.
Right.
It has so many angles and elements. That's why I say it's my favorite practice from Conscious Uncoupling.
Yeah. Beautiful. And the other thing about it is that we really begin now with the feelings and needs to start to cultivate an intimate relationship with ourselves, so that by expressing those feelings and the needs, very important, that we're actually growing, as I said, this intimate relationship with ourselves. We're understanding where we're centered in consciousness at any given time.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's move into step 2, reclaim your power and your life. So how can we take responsibility for our part in the breakdown and let go of any victimization that's hiding in the shadows of our psyche,
Yes.
The path to reclaiming your power is in your willingness to see your part in the breakdown. Even if you feel it's only like 3% of yours to own and 97% your partner,
Yes.
when you take responsibility for your part, you're able to disidentify with being the victim. And this is where the power lies.
Mm-hmm.
This is in your ability to keep the focus on yourself and how you might have co-created this dynamic. So maybe it was really subtle. Like maybe you didn't pay attention to red flags, or you didn't speak up because you wanted to keep the peace, or you didn't set boundaries because you didn't want to disappoint somebody. So this is what taking responsibility for our 3% looks like. And when you do that, you want to do it in an empowered way, like you're on a simple fact-finding mission, like you're a detective. So again, no shame or blame, just getting curious. So I'm wondering what you have to say about that, Isandra, in terms of taking responsibility for your 3%.
Yes. Well, this is one thing that really was life-changing for me, to stop and look at my part. It's very easy to feel like the victim in many situations, and there are many situations in which you are a victim, right? There's terrible things people can do to you. But at the same time, this idea of being curious about what has happened, for me, it was like really life changing. And I think I see it all the time with my clients. Curiosity is like the key to all of this. Being able to look at things from a place in which I am trying to figure it out. What is it that I allowed? What is it that I didn't do? What is it that I did do a lot or didn't do enough? Because it's a very tender topic. I mean, it's hard when you do it for yourself, but when you are with the client, it's a tender topic to share with the client, right? And holding it with the lens of curiosity makes it doable. It allows people
Right.
to open up and be willing to look at that, even if it's really hard.
Yeah, because we as coaches, when we're holding that with our clients, it's so sacred. And we are, like you were saying earlier, we're helping them be seen and heard. And so that is totally removing any shame or blame, because, we are creating this safe container for them to be able to share and explore,
Yeah. Well, and without this information, it's really hard to make lasting change that has an impact. So you have to like unravel all of that so that you can
Yeah.
do things differently, even at a difficult time if you're going through the process, through the uncoupling at the moment, or even for your future, so that you can do things differently with the person you are ending or transforming the relationship and whoever else is in relationship with you.
Yeah, that is so true. And, it makes me think of like that which we're unraveling is like old baggage from the past, right? So if we unravel it, and then we can just drop it on the side of the road and move into our future so that we're not taking these victimized stories into our future.
Mm-hmm. And
You
the
know?
thing is that along with the emotions we talked about in step 1, looking at our responsibility and taking care of our emotions is something that here in Conscious Uncoupling we like to look at, as opposed to give our back to, or skip over, or push down. And so that is one of the things that you have to be brave to when you choose to do a conscious uncoupling, because it's going to be intense, and at the same time it's going to open a whole new world for you, a possibility.
Absolutely. I love that. The whole new world of possibilities for the future that is yet to be created, but that most people can sense into, that there's something better on the horizon. They just don't know how to get there,
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're here.
That's a beautiful
So,
path. Catherine gave us a beautiful path, and we are here for it.
yeah. So I'd like to share briefly about a client who I was taking through this step 2, reclaim your power in your life. And I'll call him Gary. And he felt very abused and taken advantage of by his wife for not prioritizing him. He felt ignored. So he just shut down. And so when he wrote to me about his responsibility, he shared that I have not actively been taking responsibility in creating my own happiness or even thinking about that which would make me happy. I put my happiness as something for later. And that if I do everything that is asked of me, one day my happiness will suddenly appear. And through our work, he began to see that he chose not to think about himself. He chose not to think about what he wanted for himself. He chose to do nothing and aspired to do nothing, which only led to more discontent. And he didn't put any effort into anything besides getting her off my back and wanting to be left alone. So what was motivating him to do this was fear of rejection and loneliness. And ultimately, Gary made amends to himself and vowed to be deeply present with himself and listen to his desire and move in that direction to fulfill his own desires and dreams. I love that turnaround about how Gary became so responsible, so self-aware of how his actions were keeping that victimized story so stuck in his consciousness.
Beautiful. Yes. And I see a lot of similar stories with mothers who are giving because it's part of their role, right? Parents too, fathers too will give too, but it takes you through a journey that sometimes you forget about yourself, or you leave yourself last. And that's something I noticed for myself, and even in that area of food that you like to talk about. Because, for example, in my home, when my kids were small, I was vegetarian. My daughter had an allergy with milk, and my son and my former husband would eat everything else. So cooking very different menus for everybody sometimes meant that I wouldn't cook for myself, right? Leaving myself last. And I would eat anything, right? And as I did this type of work, at some point I realized that it was time for me to feed myself first. Just like when you're in the airplane and you're encouraged to put the mask on first.
That's right.
I realized that if I wasn't doing that, it was going to be even harder for myself and for everybody. So because my mood wasn't going to be the best if I didn't eat.
That's right. That mood wasn't going to be the best.
So, it's in the little details. I like to look at those little details because they are telltale about what's going on in our relationship with ourselves and the choices we're making. And it shows where the responsibility of what's happening may be coming from us too.
That's right. That's right. And so this particular step, talking about our victimized story, when we look at the food choices that we're making when we're inside of that victimization, it just makes so much sense that we just stuck. There's just no access to change or growth. Because I can imagine how you must have felt. Here you are as a young mother trying to cook for everyone, and you don't get to cook what is the best for you.
Exactly.
That is so sad.
And I think it's not until we start questioning these things with work like this that we see it, right? In the meantime, we just keep going. This is what it takes. This is what it takes. But it's not like that. If we really pause and look at it, we can see what's most important for everybody. In that case, what was most important is that I eat first what I need.
That's right.
And everybody else is going to be happy too.
That's right. If mom eats, everybody's going to be happy too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Properly, everybody's happiness, is a little bit more guaranteed.
Yes, absolutely. That makes me think of that we've also talked about in this podcast is how important intention is. So when you're doing the exploring and you're looking for your responsibility, or you're considering what your food choices are and you're taking responsibility, always setting an intention first to act as your North Star is the best way to move forward, right? To help you navigate these stormy waters that a breakup entails, and they help us stay true to our commitment, whatever that is, especially in the area of health, to stay committed to our own health.
They do.
Yeah.
And I understand that when we are going through a very vulnerable time, like a separation or divorce, some binging and stress eating is allowed.
Emotional eating, yes.
Yes, some of that is allowed, but we also, if we have a clear intention of what we want to achieve and how we want to do it, we can use it to test our choices against our intention to see what's best for us to be able to achieve it. So definitely having that intention in all areas of our lives is going to be a game changer.
Absolutely. And I always like to say, with the intention, saying the intention, and then if I put a piece of food up to my mouth, I'm looking at that piece of food. Is this for me or against me?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Is this for me or against me? And if you really want it at the moment, and then you go ahead and imbibe, just notice how you're feeling about it later. How you're feeling about you, how your gut is feeling after you had that. I know I've talked about before how immediate a feedback loop I have. If I eat something that's bad for me, I'll enjoy it in the present moment, and then later it will come back to haunt me.
Yes, it can haunt you in different ways. For some of it,
various ways.
Getting overweight.
Indeed. Oh my goodness. Well, let's move into step 3. Are we ready here to break the pattern and heal the heart? And this is our process to break up old patterns that are most likely very old, from a wounding from the past, maybe from childhood, and now have actually resurfaced in this breakup, occurring like a rewounding. So in Conscious Uncoupling, we call this wounding your source fracture story, the original break in your heart. that formed an identity, a self-sense in your body about who you were and what was possible for you to have in life or not. One of the most profound gifts of the 5-step conscious uncoupling process is that you learn to feel the truth in your body about how deeply good enough you are, how deeply wanted, and how so loved you are. So it's not an intellectual experience. All of the difficult feelings that you have been experiencing or repressing are actually a wake-up call for you to harness that energy, those feelings, and use it to liberate yourself from the pain, from that pattern, to wake up and propel yourself into the life you really desire to be living. In other words, to create a clean slate for your life. And I'm wondering, Isandra, if you would like to share here about your own story about this or your clients.
Well, it was interesting because in this step, we're noticing what is the filter we have been living through. We're identifying that filter and looking at it in a way that we can say, is this really true or not, right? Is this who I am, or is this just a filter? It's the lens I've been living. And when I was preparing for today, I thought about this experience I had recently because I've struggled with weight. And I've had my doctor say, because I passed my menopause, I'm 53, that it's going to be really hard to lose weight. So I kind of been victimized by my age.
Yeah.
And last year, I was able to lose 32 pounds, regardless of being 52 last year. And it's interesting.
Wonderful.
Because what changed is the choices I made, right? I made different choices in exercise. I made different choices in food. But I had to remove that lens of, I am going to be overweight because I am 53 or 52. I did have a relapse in that because I had a fall. I couldn't do my exercise. There was other things going on. However, I know I can do it again. What is really true is that if I put some effort in my choices, I am awake to my choices, to my intention, I can make different choices and I can actually lose weight no matter what age I have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, with the practices that we have with the inner sanctuary of safety and learning to soothe yourself constantly, to make sure that she's not feeling shame and blame, but that really you've got her,
Absolutely. So even in that arena, all of these practices and skills have been very valuable to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think in dealing with working with people, singles or couples, I've experienced that by the time we get through step 3, the transformation that has occurred is so powerful because they really do get that they are not their past.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to live that fate-filled legacy of pain that many times people experience in childhood, but that as an adult, you get to choose differently. The ball's in your court now. You can say what it is you're going to align with and what your deepest desires are. And you can move in that direction based on the truth of who you are,
Yeah.
And the exciting thing is that when a person really does truly feel their goodness and worthiness, they will organically start to care about themselves in all the healthy ways. And of course, as we just spoke about, with the whole food component too, because that food isn't providing the emotional salve that sometimes people use it for because they're feeling filled up with who they are.
Yeah.
the goodness, the worthiness of who they are.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to see people feeling they have woken up, right, from this trance that has kept them
Yeah.
having a lesser life than they want or deserve, and wanting to and feeling free to create something new because of the clarity that they've uncovered, and because of the skills and capacities they can now choose to develop. Because one of the things that
Right.
I love about this step is that it gives you the opportunity to notice what are your areas of growth. And when you
Mm-hmm.
notice that, what are the areas of growth that you need to develop? It's up to you whether you're going to develop them or not. But if you do, a whole world opens up for you.
Yes. Yes, I love that. Thank you for bringing that forward, because what I also want to share about that is that, when you begin to feel the worthiness and the goodness inside of you, how deserving you are to have what you desire, you actually get a glimpse back into your life that you've experienced this in some way. It's part of your lived experience. You were rocking your life at some point. And we, as coaches, help the people remember that they were rocking their life at some point. Something great was happening, and help them own it, claim it as being part of who they are. So that helps their felt sense of feeling goodness, of feeling worthy, because they recognize it. A part of them experienced it, even for a nanosecond. They felt it. Maybe on the day they got married, or maybe on the day they graduated from college, or maybe at the birth of their first child, or maybe at the second career that they created in midlife, But
Mm,
it's really important to align and identify with the strengths and the resources so that it doesn't seem like it's so out there. It originated within us.
mm,
We just have to identify it and claim it.
mhm.
You know?
I have a beautiful story of a client who had taken the bar exam, lawyer's bar exam, on several
Mm-hmm.
occasions, and she had not passed the exam. And when she
Oh,
came to me to work with me, she learned all of these practices, and she started developing different skills and capacities and everything. And one day she told me she was going to go for the exam again. And I was a little bit worried, I have to say that, because it has been such a devastating part of her life. I was a little bit scared. I was like, oh my God. But suddenly she says, I want to take the exam from the person I know myself to be right now. From all the work that she had done, she sensed that it would be different. And it was. She passed with flying colors. She went for it and she passed with flying colors. And it took a lot from her because she had to go back to
yeah.
studying. She was not in a community of students anymore. So it took a
Yeah.
lot from her, but she did it. So there's many ways
Yay.
in which this type of work serves us if we actually follow it, if we actually follow its principles.
That's beautiful. That's very, very moving, and such a clear example of a transformation occurring in real time.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. All right. So let's move into step 4, becoming a love alchemist, which really teaches us how to release any toxic residue that might still be present. If you're working on this with your former partner, or if you're just working on it by yourself, we have such beautiful practices of dialoguing with your former partner. And if you're doing the work by yourself, then we also help coach people to do what we call soul-to-soul communication, to dialogue with your former partner in a soul-to-soul way, which, believe it or not, is so effective and can be felt energetically in the field. But I love this dialogue, and we touched on it earlier, of this golden repair that really does help weave a bright new future, and I wish that these tools of generative communication that we give to our clients and ourselves would be like part of the Bill of Rights or Constitution, or at least mandatory.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have a client story I'd like to share that they really went through this step, and this was truly their transformation. But by the time they decided to divorce, Janet and Craig had just broken down their communication. It was actually non-existent. And Janet was in a deep state of self-loathing and experienced such rage that she often lashed out uncontrollably. And Craig withdrew his energy from the relationship, and he never shared his feelings and needs. He had very little communication with his family and would often isolate. So he would go on business trips, leaving Janet alone with their son. And they had moved 9 times before she even gave birth. So she was constantly alone and feeling abandoned. And all of this, of course, prevented true intimacy from ever growing in their relationship. And they just each blamed each other for a failed marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Craig felt like he was alone and that it was too late for love to flourish. And Janet held so tight to the belief that she didn't matter, which of course showed in her behaviors. But through our work together and through Craig's honest and vulnerable accountability for his actions, she softened and truly took responsibility for how her actions drove a deeper wedge in their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And at our joint meetings, they forgave each other and asked for forgiveness and committed to communicating openly and generatively as they moved into their future of co-parenting their beloved son. The past had been completed, and an understanding of how their childhood wounds had crept into their adult behaviors became crystal clear. A sense of hope and peace for their futures naturally emerged. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts about that or shared experiences, Isandra?
Well, I think it's a beautiful story and a testament to the kind of work we do and to the clients who are brave enough to look at what needs to be looked at on their part and are generous and vulnerable enough to share it with their partner. If she would have stayed with that information and left the marriage, she would have wasted an opportunity, right?
That's right.
Recreate, to create a new healthy relationship with her partner. So it's not only the information that you uncover, but also how you use it. And one of the things I talk a lot up with my clients is that when they actually identify what they want, what they are feeling and need, and they are venturing out into the world of expressing it, it is common also that people just lash out. People explode.
Yeah.
So they go from quiet to screaming, lashing out, and they have to find their center, right? So sometimes there's
Yeah.
a period, a learning curve, a period of transition. I mean, maybe in the case of your client, she had always been like that. I don't know what's the case. But even with the ones who are now moving into the scenario of speaking up, it's a period also of adjustment. And this is when step 3 and you being centered in the truth of who you are and with the right beliefs is what is going to help you communicate properly in a way that is effective and allows communication
Yeah.
to actually happen and transformations like that to actually happen for the benefit of the parties and the family and everybody involved. So it's beautiful.
It is. And I love what you're saying, the word transition, because it is a transition, and to go from being quiet to raging uncontrollably. It's not like the wound, you just got rewounded, basically. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like it happened, let's say 40 years ago. It happened 4 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that wound just had the scab torn off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're back in that same old dynamic, So that's what we're trying to break up. That's what we're trying to deconstruct, so that if you normally would spend, a few days in this victimized place, that now with our tools, just in a nanosecond, you're out of it and back to really feeling and living the truth of who you are.
And I think that also we as coaches help them a lot in that fine tuning, because somebody who goes through an experience like that of then lashing out because I actually finally spoke, then they're going to go back into shame because it didn't go turn out
Right.
well. I mean, the communication that they finally expressed wasn't a good thing at all, right? And it's our job to be there for them and give them a perspective of what's happening and helping them go back to their center so that they can actually be effective in what they are attempting to do.
Right. Right. And then we also help them with forgiveness practices, which we're going to have another episode about. But that's absolutely a beautiful segue into then whatever goes on, however they behave, to be able to forgive themselves first and foremost,
Mm-hmm. To
and be able to move on.
have that
Yeah.
compassion. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
that acknowledgement of being human. I just tell my clients, remember, you're still human.
That's right.
That's the first thing. You're still human.
That's right. And, just like we talk about food, 80/20 rule, 80% of the time, choose wisely, choose that which reflects the highest and the best for your optimum health. And so too with our behaviors. If we fall off the wagon 20%, just get back into that wagon without shaming and blaming yourself, because you get take two.
Yeah.
You get to do a retake
Yeah.
on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move into our step 5, happily even after, which gives us the opportunity to complete old agreements that we might have had with our former partner and really create new ones that are more appropriate for the direction the relationship is taking. Right? So this is always a very, very poignant and thoughtful time for people when they're thinking about, the original agreements that the relationship was founded upon, and how now, as it's changing, what is more appropriate? What is an agreement that we can come up with that will really reflect who we're going to be moving forward? And what's the story we're going to be telling to other people about this breakup? So thoughts on that, my dear?
Well, a lot of many of my clients had a lot of work to do here in the area of communication, definitely.
Yes.
In the areas also of overgiving. Sometimes we have somebody who has been overgiving a lot, and it's time for them to put a healthy boundary around how much they are going to give now. So there's actually a balance in the relationship. There are all sorts of boundaries that people may need to put into place. Sometimes when people have been very clingy, it's important that they express how they are going to refrain from that too. Um, so the other part needs to know about these things. So that comes inside of the agreements that they may need to work out, so that everybody's informed,
Right.
that they can also see each other for what each other is willing to bring to the table now, and allow that to be the right thing for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what you're speaking to also includes making amends to each other, for the ways that they have, each of the people have shown up as a dimmed down version of themselves. So like I apologize for dimming my light in your presence, for playing small, for not speaking up my healthy needs and desires. I take responsibility for that so that the other person can see and hear and feel that you have indeed underwent your own transformation and that you're going to be showing up differently, more aligned in your truth. So that's what I love about the new agreements too, because each person honors their particular path when expressing these new agreements.
Absolutely. And I guess that one thing we haven't mentioned is that sometimes, and very frequently, especially with my clientele, conscious uncoupling does not involve both parties being doing the program or the coaching. And sometimes that agreement is between you and you. Sometimes that agreement might be with somebody else, and maybe that other person is not ready to. You may need to prepare the other person because they might not be ready if they have done the work that you've done, right? That sometimes you're going out there and giving your best and being very firm with your new ways of being, and see what the other person might bring, because it's not always having both people in the relationship available for this. And it doesn't mean it's not going to work. You can always show up in a new way and propose new agreements, right? And if they are healthy, they are likely to be taken into account, of course.
Yeah, and I think it is challenging, but of course we shepherd our clients through that process of bringing closure to the relationship if they're doing it by themselves. That you don't really need the other person there at all, that you can be the one that brings closure to this relationship just by altering, first of all, loving yourself and honoring yourself and making choices and taking actions that are going to do that for you moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And only you doing that can turn things around in many ways, right? How you show up can set the tone for the next steps in the relationship, whatever it is that may be. And there's a lot of power in that. So you don't have to worry if you're interested in doing something like this, conscious uncoupling, and the other person is not there for you to do it with you.
Right.
You can still do it, and you can still change your life, because it's not up to anybody else's choices that you're going to change your life. It's up to you.
Yep, it's an inside job. Yeah. And I think the other part that's really important is, whether you're a couple or a single going through this process, is that it's really important how you tell the story of the breakup to your family, to your friends, to your colleagues. What's the story you're going to tell? And we hope that it's one of taking responsibility. It's one of respect. It's one of, really asking people to not collude with you in victimization, but rather to hold you with the highest and the best, so that you, the person going through conscious uncoupling, can really serve to be a model of inspiration to others who might be thinking about this process. And they might be then leaning into you, for guidance, which would be lovely, because that also speaks to how we move this work forward in the world, paying it forward, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's lovely how people get to be leaders in that sense for the family.
Yeah.
As they set the tone,
Yes.
and also, have direct conversations about this with different people in their lives and in their community, but also how they model it. Like, it's just
That's
both
right.
things. Because some people are really loved by the person who is, by the partner, and some people are really hated inside a relationship. And if you have chosen to do a conscious uncoupling, then it's up to you to set the boundaries. At least when they're in your presence, they have to treat people in a certain way, or not refer to them in a certain way, or not bash them, or whatever it is.
Right.
At least when you're around. Absolutely.
Well, hopefully they don't have the desire to
Well,
anymore.
I've had clients who've had really hard time getting their family to get it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, because your family, your parents, they want the best for you, and if they feel something has been done to you or has happened, they may be very angry and resentful. They haven't been going to conscious uncoupling with you, right? So they might need, sometimes it's a little bit hard, but I think it's completely worth it to go through it.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, it's the person going through the process and not their family or friends that is important anyway, really.
Absolutely.
They're the ones who have been seeking to have this completion, to have this closure.
Yes.
So let's move on to the food, the sugar aspect of everything, as we're talking about making new agreements. I mean, doesn't it stand to reason that when you're making new agreements for how you're going to be showing up in your life, that food would be included in that? What are some new agreements regarding your food choices that you can now make, that are going right along with your behavioral changes?
Yes. Well, I think that one of the things that I see a lot is that when people are used to self-abandon, it's a phrase that we use when people are really oriented to others as opposed to being here with themselves. They live like this, like this. Even if it's because they're taking care of others, they might not be making the best choices in food, but also even in eating. I have several clients who have the problem of not eating, right? And it's
Yes.
part of the stress, and it's part of the devastating feelings and all of that. But at the same time, if you really want to create a healthy relationship from what's just happened or is happening, it's up to you to make the choices that will support you physically to actually do it, right? You have to
That's
take care
right.
of yourself and be with you, not only in thought and in practices and in meditations, but also in how you feed yourself, because that's, a primary need that we all have. And it's very easy for people to forget about it.
Yeah. Beautiful, Isandra. I love you bringing that forward. That's a beautiful, just tying it all together. Thank you. That's gorgeous. Well, I think we have come to the end of our time today. I'm so grateful to you for this deep and comprehensive conversation on the gift that conscious uncoupling brings to our world and your contribution to it with all of your vast expertise, your heart, and all of your offerings, Isandra. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I wonder if you would like to share with our listeners how they might connect with you. What would be your website, your Instagram, whatever you'd like to share?
Yes, you can find me at my happyhealthylovinglife.com. That's my website. Or you can find me at Isandra Muñoz, Munoz, Bonilla. It's a long Spanish name, Bonilla, at gmail.com. And you're free to reach out to me with any questions. So I work in English and Spanish, and I welcome any questions or any comments you would have about this or any topic related to this work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Isandra. And I have a conscious uncoupling guide that I will put in the show notes. And also wanted to let you know that I have 3 spots available for coaching right now. And my Calendly link is at the bottom of the show notes. So I just want to, before we close this episode of Love Sugar, I want to hear from you. What's one small thing you are committed to doing this week that will really reinforce your emotional health? And what's one small thing you could do this week that would really reinforce your physical health? I'd love to hear from you. So just leave a comment right below, and I'd love to reply back to you. All right. Thank you for listening to the Love Sugar podcast. And as always, remember to take care of yourself first. Thank you for listening and for watching if you're joining us on YouTube. If you got value out of this conversation, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when the next episode of the Love Sugar podcast drops. Until next time, always take care of yourself first.